We had a few of our staff went to about a 6-hour training on trauma informed learning, and we gave them some information that we thought we might be interested in a grant that was out there, and we got contacted by Marsha Morgan. She's the founder of Resilience Builders, and ever since then, we've been working with her and Terry and Erica, and I do not know Erica's last name, Terry. I can never pronounce it, so I'm not going to try. And we've done we did a staff meeting, which was really great. The staff really enjoyed it. And then we also did a professional development training in October. And we've just been provided a lot of resources through the grant. It's just a really good opportunity, I think, for our center to learn more about trauma-informed information and resilience. And tonight, Terry is going to talk to you guys a little bit more about that and give you some information. Terry works for ComCare Behavioral Health, and he's consulting with the Resilience Builders. So Terry, I'll let you go ahead and take it from here. Maybe give him some information about the grant and our opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate the time tonight, everybody. And hopefully this is interactive. And since I encourage you to, unmute yourself and ask questions throughout the presentation if you have something that you think of while we're talking. But as Kathy said, this came out of a grant through Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education. And then they contracted with some children's services for early childhood centers across the state of Missouri. And so there are 20 other centers participating in this opportunity and it's really around engaging early childhood centers, the families and the kiddos into building an understanding around trauma-informed care services and then resiliency skills. And so a lot of support. Obviously that involves awareness of your own self and then helping your kids bring about awareness around regulating in challenging times. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to try to keep it as common as possible, just a little bit about myself. I'm actually a licensed counselor by trade, but I've been in the business for over 25 years in the behavioral health world. I've worked at Truman Medical Center before ComCare and have really worked around building programs and services to support kids. I was part of helping build Lakewood Counseling Center in downtown Lee Summit, which is part of the Truman system, and worked there for many years. And so we'll go over some resources because I know when Kathy and her team took a survey on initiation of this project, which actually started back in August, and it's been challenging with COVID to be able to deal with trying to bring about education to staff and you all. And so Kathy and I talked about what would be helpful and like the idea of doing something for families as well. And so that's how we got to here. And I work with a bunch of consultants across the state of Missouri and helping bring trauma-informed practices to not just early childhood centers, but to healthcare centers, behavioral health centers, schools. Excuse me. Marsha Morgan with Resilience Builders also works with the Lee Summit School District. And so Kathy and the team at Our Lady of the Presentation Early Childhood Center has the opportunity to continue the Learning Collaborative with another grant and potentially move into year 3. And so you might see more of me or other people that are talking about these services. So I know our time is limited, and you guys, I thank you very much for taking a moment out of your busy day, week, month to be able to learn about this. So, and I can't really see anybody, but Some of the things we want to talk about tonight are types of trauma and how they relate to stress, and then responses to stress and how to deal with that. And then what are some ways to be resilient? And so I know that you guys have lots of challenges in your life. We all do. And so it would be helpful if you take a moment for yourself to really figure out what do you need to do to be present and focused. That's a resiliency skill I think we all have to practice often with all of the different challenges and distractions. And I'm sure because you have little ones at home with you, that it's probably doubly challenging. So if there are other things that you would like me to talk about, just let me know. So I'll take a pause there while you are working on focusing, doing anything you need to do to get focused and engaged. Is there anything that anybody, just knowing the limited amount that they want me to make sure I cover tonight? I don't. Let me see if I can change the view so I can see who's with us. I do have a habit of calling on people, so I'll try not to do that, but I'll keep moving forward. But if anybody thinks of anything, go ahead and bring it up. So trauma. Who has a sense of what trauma, what is something that you think of when you hear the word trauma? Anybody have anything that comes to mind? I can't tell if Rosalind is trying to speak or not.
A physiological response to a perceived fear or danger.
Thank you. Yes, a physiological response to a perceived danger. That's wonderful. Have you gone through some trainings? I feel like you have the book definition there. No, that's good.
Artie Macy.
I'm sorry.
It's just the Artie Macy definition.
Ah, okay, very good. So, yes, an incident or experience or witness where a person has is perceived as traumatic. And so it's all based on your lived experience, right? So everybody brings different backgrounds and different life experiences. And so everyone's going to have a different level of perceived trauma or perceived stress, have a different response based on our genetics and then our environment and how we were brought up. And so, and things that, things that happen to us. I can tell you, I was in a pretty serious, and a lot of people think of physical trauma when they think of trauma, but we're also talking mostly about psychological trauma. And so what are things that are happening, what are events that are happening that create a stress factor in our body, and they tag our emotions and responses to the situation where, if you have a car accident, somebody rear ends you, you're gonna potentially, depending on your situation, may have a more intense response to that. If you see cars coming up behind you after that event happens, that's going to be a normal kind of response, because now your brain has a tag in it that was a traumatic situation for you. So yeah, everybody has their own protective factors and your own level of resiliency. So what skills have you learned over your life? And so when you also think about our kiddos, what skills are we teaching them and to respond to when they have a difficult situation that they encounter? And so what the goal that we're hoping for is that our school systems and our family systems can support our kiddos in a way that they feel like they can respond in an appropriate manner and cope with that situation, right? So hopefully not a serious situation, but every kind of interaction that we may be having. So some types of trauma are private event trauma. And so those are things that happen privately, where you may be with somebody else one-on-one, nobody else is around. There's secrecy around it. A lot of times there's a power imbalance. And so you've heard a lot about Me Too and that, and the situation that people are put in work environments. And so those things happen whenever there's a power differential and can cause undue stress or burden on somebody doing things that maybe are against their will. And so what can those things lead to are isolation and hopelessness, loss. They create an emotional and a physical reaction, right, where we may not want to be in similar situations like that. And so that's one type of trauma. Any questions or comments? The second type I want to talk about is public event trauma. And so this is like something that it would be a shared experience among several people that happens publicly without your control. And I think some may say that the events that happened last week at the Capitol could be a public event trauma where people were subjected to force and it was out of their control and caused a lot of emotional, physical reaction, fight, flight, or freeze. You saw people fleeing that situation. Some people chose to fight, other people hid. And so those are all things that we're going to get into in a little bit, but that's an example. I think other examples could be fires, tornadoes, things like that. Sorry, my dog is deciding he wants to get in on this presentation. I don't know if you can hear him or not, but anyway, I'll take a pause. Emily, your picture is familiar. I'm not sure if I've met you before, but I live in this community.
I'm not sure.
Okay, community trauma. So this is a combination of experiences that negatively impact the whole community. Can anybody think of anything that's happened recently that, I mean, you could think actually the event at the Capitol could be a community traumatic event. I mean, I think people experience trauma to that event that weren't even there. So I hear and have talked to people since that event that has caused a lot of concern and fear. And that may be because they've had other situations or it brings discomfort, uncertainty, but could involve a lot of people or could involve a few people, but there are social consequences to that. And so some people may put that event last week into a community trauma event, something that will always, I think you hear people talking about, like, we'll always look back on that day in history, similar to 9/11. And so that is what you would consider a traumatic event. You might always think, oh, I remember I was here when that happened. And so common things. What type of trauma do you equate to COVID-19? Since that's one of the things we're living through right now is the pandemic, and it's been going on for a year now. So a lot of stress, pressure happening within family units, within schools, within communities. What do you guys think of? Anybody have a comment?
I think it may depend on how it's impacting you on a personal level, but it's definitely a community experience too.
Yes, thank you, Leanne. I appreciate that. It's definitely a community event and a public event, right? But it also could be a personal traumatic event for you, depending on what's happening to you. And so it's all going to be related to your experience and what you're having and how you're responding. I've talked to lots of people in the community and talked to lots of people in different situations and businesses and schools. where they talk about the stress of trying to have a full-time job, trying to work from home, trying to school 3 kids. You know, all those things create additional stress in our lives that we have to deal with and manage. And so we've seen it quite a bit in an uptick in people needing mental health services, feeling hopeless and despair, and needing help to work through that through a counselor or a coach, or, you know, self-help apps that are big right now. So yeah. So responses, let's get a little bit into how we respond to trauma. So our system that's built into our brain and how we operate is fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm sure that many of you have heard this, we've alluded to it previously. It's a pretty common thing where what is your immediate response to a situation and what's happening? And so I don't know if you can think of a situation that's happened recently, you know, where you maybe feel threatened and you want to leave that situation. You know, some people want to flee a situation because it's causing them stress, pressure. Another way that people respond, or they might get defensive and escalate and start yelling and screaming and moving their arms around. And I will tell you of a situation. I was flying on a plane during COVID to take my son back to college. And there was a woman at the gate that was just out of control, screaming, irate. And it was all over the fact that they weren't going to let her on the plane because she was refusing to wear a mask. And so she felt like she didn't need to have to wear a mask. And so she was fighting and confronting that situation. And so, but it was causing a lot of distress in the whole area of that airport. And it was actually the whole, I mean, you could hear it all the way down the concourse. And so there was a lot of discomfort going on there. People wondering, heightened awareness, like what's going on? What do I need to do here? And so, you know, sometimes that happens depending on the situation. I think Kathy and I were talking the other day about even at the school with the situation that happened with the guy coming in or attempting to come into the facility, and how that's changed kind of the center's approach to how people enter the building to create a more safe environment. And then, you know, what kind of systems are in place, and that you guys are working on implementing new procedures around, you know, how to respond and how to teach the kiddos to respond in that situation to keep them safe. And so, yeah. Anybody, Roseanne, did you want to, Rosalind, sorry, did you want to say something? Okay. So these are 3 ways that typically you could respond, but let's talk a little bit about how does trauma present itself in kids? And so how do we know when our kids are stressed or have, and I like to talk about it, not just trauma, because trauma is, you have to define that was a traumatic situation for you or your kiddo. But I also think stress and toxic stress, really negative stress that creates undue burden that maybe doesn't rise to the level of a full traumatic event. But once again, that's how it's perceived and how it's received from the kiddo or from you. And so something that you may think is traumatic may not be as traumatic for another person because they just have a different way of interfacing with that. Just like sometimes, I don't know if you think of situations where you may respond to the way somebody says something to you because of maybe interactions that you've had growing up or with family or with somebody that causes you to respond a certain way. But somebody else may not respond the same way to something being said that way because they were raised differently. They have different ability, resilience, skills in place. And so everybody's going to respond differently. And so things that you can look for are an ability to focus, having trouble remembering situations, becoming aggressive. And so if you see that all of a sudden there's a behavior change, withdrawing, seeking attention, fearful, could be self-medicating if you have older kiddos in the household, and then just unable to regulate ourselves, right? We just we get really upset, we're unable to calm down. Those could all be signs that something is going on and something's wrong. And so that's when we need to flip the switch and think about inquiry, trying to understand, well, what's happened? Can you tell me, what's going on? Is there a way to talk about that? And, depending on the age of your kids, and I know a lot of you have little kiddos because we're in the early childhood, pre-K, sometimes it's easier to have a conversation that's not directly a conversation, but using art as a way to drawing, coloring, because then it puts the attention on the activity and not necessarily on the conversation. And so it's an easier way to interact and potentially get information. And so you see a lot of art kinds of activities with kiddos to help them kind of talk through and work through a situation. Any comments or questions? So similarly, for adults, you may trauma may present itself similarly to kiddos, right? So you may have memory issues, inability to focus, being withdrawn, fearful, self-medicating, unable to regulate. Does everyone understand what I mean by regulation? So you get upset, but you're unable to calm yourself down, unable to refocus your attention, recenter your attention. Those would be all things that would give you clues to deregulation. And then what are you doing to kind of get recentered or refocused? And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Any comments or questions? Oh, well, and we're there. So building resilience. So this is where we start talking about what are the coping strategies that you use, to help yourself and help your kiddos. And so one of the things that we like to say, similar to when you're on an airplane and they say, if something happens, put your mask on first. We want to make sure that I'm in control of myself, that I'm managing my own self, and then I need to then I can help my kiddo regulate themselves. And so and that's why they say, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, but that's why they say when your kiddos start to be out of control, and you find yourself kind of getting into that spiral and buying into that cycle, because it's easy to do, you have to sometimes step away from that and see if it's possible to tag out or just to take a break. Sometimes it's just good to separate and put some air between it. But one of the things I wanted to do or talk about is breathing. And so that's really one of the most essential things that we don't do when we get upset. Our body gets tense. We start, we clench. And so, you have to know, where do you feel the stress, pressure, or trauma in your body? Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Anybody want to share where they might feel stress, pressure?
I'd say in my chest, like it gets tight.
Thank you. And yes, feel it in your chest, feel it in your stomach, your gut. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there are as many neurons in our gut system as there are in our brain. And so we feel a lot in our gut, right? And so when something's not right, that's usually where I feel it first, like, oh my gosh. And then I may feel it in my arms, in my hands. Sometimes people feel it on their faces get red. And so any of those things you could give you clues. And so one of the first things that we want to do is breathe when we start to feel that. And so normally I like to do breathing exercises where, I don't know if you guys have heard of box breathing, but this is even, it's not oblong breathing or whatever, I don't know what you call it, but, and some people say, if you just breathe out to the count of 7 or 8, you're going to automatically breathe in after that, right? So that's a long breath out and a breath in. So if you breathe in, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and then breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I don't know, try that right now. Breathe in for a count of 3 to 4, and then breathe out to a count of 7 or 8. And feel how hard that is to do. Because it's hard to, you know, when you're breathing short breaths, it's hard to actually have that long out breath. But by doing that, you're slowing your system down. The other thing that we want to make sure we're doing with our breathing is we're breathing in through our nose. So when we breathe in through our nose by a count of 4, that's causing our natural parasympathetic system to respond. It's a natural calming system for our body. Our brain, it just automatically activates that. So breathing in by a count of 4 through our nose and out by a count of 7 or whatever you can get to. Doing that at least 3 times, but 3 to 5 times, you're gonna feel a difference. So try it now if you can. Breathe in by 3 or 4 and out by 7. Do that 3 or 4 times and see how different you feel. You should have a sense of energy that's coming throughout your system, and that's helping your body calm down naturally. So resilience is defined as the capacity to prepare or cope with and grow through adversity. So just think about that for a second. The capacity to be able to prepare and cope and grow through adversity. So it's a way to respond to an adverse situation. How do we do that? There's lots of things to do. What are some things that you guys do to build capacity to cope? Are there things that you do naturally that you like to do to kind of strengthen your resiliency skills? Anybody want to share? Okay, well, one of the things we want to do is cultivate empathy. So we do that through building a system of empathy in our lives, right? So how do we care for other people? How do we cultivate that? And there's several things that we can do. And if we're thinking about for our kids, here's 5 tips in cultivating empathy. And it's through the Harvard resources for families, and you can find it online if you'd like after this. But first of all, model empathy to others. Model that caring sense, like genuine concern, understanding of the situation, right? we do that all the time with our kiddos when we're trying to understand what's going on when they're upset, right? So taking care of others, providing opportunities for our kiddos to practice empathy. So when we see a situation, we want to model that and help them see and understand like another person may be having difficulty, and that we can understand that, and that we can be concerned for them and want to support them. Now, some kids, I think, do this naturally, and then other kids don't. And so we're trying to expand that ability across all of our kiddos, right? And that's something that we're always trying to do. So, and expanding our children's circle of concern is helping them see that caring for other people is important. And so that's a skill I know that in the classroom they teach a lot. I see Kathy shaking her head around wanting to make sure that understand it's not just about you, it's about seeing other people's perspectives and developing that sense.
Which is not always an easy lesson for children that this age. I think that's something that we try to work on every day. That because it's a lot of it's me, and I'm sure parents know that as well. So I think that's empathy is a huge part of what teachers cover in their classroom, and they may not use that word, but it's definitely something they touch on every day.
Yeah, it's a big word for the little kiddos, but the concept is there, right? Like wanting to show concern for other people, wanting to make sure that it's not just about you, because you are the kiddos are so egocentric at that point in their development, and just being able to develop self-control, right? Some kids have it naturally, other kids don't. And so helping them understand that when they get excited, it's not okay to go grab other people, that sometimes you need to be able to maintain personal space. And so I know that's something that lots of little kiddos work on, and that we help them see that. So does anybody have any other thoughts about empathy before we move on? Okay. The next way we can build resiliency is around creating predictability, right? And so that's part of the struggle right now, is there's a lot of unpredictability in our lives, right? We don't know, everything's not normal, not the way it used to be. Kids are having, sometimes having difficulty understanding why we have to wear a mask, or why we can't go play with our friends at the playground. And so dealing with all of that, but then recognizing stress is normal. It's a normal part of our lives. Intense stress all the time is not normal. And that's what a lot of us are dealing with right now. And so finding ways to kind of regulate ourselves, create an opportunity to keep ourselves calm and centered and focused. Those are all important things to be able to know. So obviously the known is better than the unknown, but there's a lot of things that are unknown right now, like how much longer we're going to have to wear masks, how much longer are we going to have have school situations, work situations be upended and kind of not what we're used to doing and operating in. So helping create a schedule is helpful, even when you have to work from home, or you have different ways of doing schooling or managing things in your life. And just having that schedule and keeping kiddos on a schedule is helpful for them in managing and regulating themselves. If they know what's coming up, they're able to understand that. And so that helps us manage our stress, which is why most classrooms have schedules that they're on and that are pretty tight, because then the kiddos know what's coming. And so having that at home is also helpful in managing that, the regulation at home. Anything anybody want to add here? Okay, we talked a little bit about self-care, and I don't know if people have certain things that they like to do with self-care. We did just talk about breathing exercise that you guys could do. Breathing breaks are important for us in recentering and refocusing. And sometimes even going outside and breathing fresh air, feeling the sun for a moment. I always say, depending on the amount of time you have, depends on what you can do, right? To regulate and practice self-care. Sometimes I may only have 5 minutes between a meeting or between classrooms or whatever. And so if you only have 5 minutes, that's going to dictate what you can do. And so sometimes that may be like a really brief walk with a breathing exercise, just feeling the sun, the cold, whatever it is, it's still good to create a different situation. It's good for the kiddos too, which is why you want to create different opportunities for them to interact with their environments, because you know, being in the same situation, same room, same setting without a long extended period of time is going to cause them to create stress and dysregulation. And so keeping them on the ability to manage that. And so lots of different things you can do around movement, mindfulness. A lot of people like to journal. Some people like to meditate. I think you have to figure out what works for you. Some people want brain breaks, so they do crosswords and word searches and coloring. Coloring is a big thing to do. So whatever, you have to find whatever works for you, whatever you can allot. So if you have 30 minutes or an hour, you know, you might be able to do more with that and exercise. And I think it's important for kiddos to figure out, like, what do they like to do to regulate? You know, what do you want to do to help? What's fun for you to do to give you a moment? And sometimes kids, some like to play with Legos, some like to play with putty, you know, you just have to find what that is for them. My son liked to play the Rubik's Cube, and so he has lots of Rubik's Cubes, and so he would solve the Rubik's Cubes. Okay. Other ways that we can practice self-care is, you know, news intake can be stressful, and what they've started to call doom scrolling, where you're scrolling through your phone and on all the different news stations or different things that are going on different social media sites. You know, that creates dopamine in our brains that causes and that can cause stress and anxiety for us. And so allow yourself, limit that amount of time. You know, for me, I do a little bit in the morning and I don't do any more news intake until the afternoon. And then, you know, I think we've talked about this, but, you know, figure out what you can take for movement, stretching, walking. The other thing I want to share is, even if you can stand up and do something, but doing cross body movements where you're going from left to right, that helps engage in the connections between the right and the left side of our brain. And so we want to make sure, you know, that's why they like to do the star cross toe touches and the side to side movements, but it really does help kind of engage our whole brain and kind of get us off whatever track we're in. And so that can help us focus, and it definitely helps kiddos. And so, you know, doing crunches or bend overs or, you know, whatever, leg lifts, you see people run in place, you know, all those kinds of things help our body kind of reset. And so those are all things that we want to do. Anybody have anything they want to share about self-care practices that they particularly like that maybe we didn't mention? Okay, any questions to now? All right, so when we talk about the 4 pillars of resistance, I really love Gail Wagenald, and I think she does a great job of really helping set the stage for core resilient skills. But we've talked a lot about taking care of your health, making sure that you're healthy, making sure your kids are healthy. And so things that we do to make sure we're healthy are eating well, eating good, healthy foods, right? Exercise and sleep. I think you're hearing a lot more now about sleep hygiene and making sure that, for kiddos, they need more sleep. Adults, they're saying it's still good to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. So if you don't do that, that's going to be hard. It's going to make it hard if if there's food scarcity, which we're hearing a lot about now during COVID. If you don't eat, your brain isn't going to work right. It's not going to focus right. If you're not getting enough sleep, it's going to cause you to have focus problems. So those are important, is making sure that we're doing good, healthy habits. Seeking support from others. It is okay to ask for help. If you are stressed out, you may need to just vent, or you may need to talk to somebody specifically about a situation. If you don't have a loved one or a friend that you can trust to have a confidential conversation, there are coaches and counselors out there that can do that for you. But find out who those support systems are for you. And I'm sure you could count on your hand, like, these are the 1, 2, 3, 5 people that I can go and talk to if I'm really stressed out and I just need some time just to vent. And then potentially, get some input about how to handle this situation differently. And that's important for kiddos as well. Like, they need to understand, like, they can come to mommy, daddy, grandpa, grandma, aunt, uncle, who are those people in their lives. As they get older, they'll have friends that they confide in. And so helping them understand, like, who are the people that you can talk to if something's wrong. And then balance and rest. And so figuring out, how to balance everything, how to build in systems where you can have places to do recreation or have respite and rest. And then what do you need to focus on and be responsible for and manage in your lives? And so hopefully you're finding, some time in your day, if it's 5, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, where you can kind of do stuff just for yourself, where you're, having time to reflect, having time just to decompress, outside of all your other challenges that maybe after your kiddos go to bed or before that, but making sure, and then also allowing them for that too. Helping, model that behavior, teaching that to your kids so that they can have that balance as well. Learning it at an early age and making it a habit is going to help them be healthier as they grow into young adults. And then engage fully in life. That's important. Find something that you like to do that's fun. Like, is it exercise? Is it reading? It may be a hobby of some sort. I know felting is becoming popular. Knitting, you have to figure out what that is for yourself. But give yourself an opportunity to expand and try something new and different. I say for 2021, what's that new thing that you're going to expose yourself to try something new and different? And who knows, that may turn into something that is life enriching, and that you really enjoy. So those are the 4 things to keep in mind when you're thinking about having a resilient mindset, building those resilient skills. Any questions or comments? Emily, sorry, I always want to call on you because you have a great photo.
It's just a photo. There's a reason it's a photo. No, I don't know. I actually have a degree in elementary ed, special ed. I never used it. So like my mind is going into so many different things right now. You're bringing up stuff.
Awesome. Well, that's good, right? So it'll give you something to think about and process.
Absolutely.
Well, and Emily, give yourself grace, right? It's okay that, you know, you're trying to figure out what that might mean, or what's coming up. What do you want to do differently? And so, but I think it's also okay. I think giving yourself and giving your kids grace around, we're not perfect. We're not always going to respond the way we would like to. The stress and pressure of all the different things we have to deal with in these days right now is enormous. And so, you know, I think what's important is to acknowledge when maybe we don't respond in the right way, right? When we say, oh my gosh, I did not mean to say that way, or that was because I was thinking about a lot of different things. And so it's okay to not be perfect in front of your kids and with your kids, and you admit that, because then you're modeling that behavior, like, I'm not perfect and it's okay, and I'm going to own it and fix it, right, and move forward. And your kids will give you grace for that. And I mean, there's been many of times where I have not responded maybe the most appropriate way with my son. And I've come back and later said, you know what, I probably shouldn't have said that way. And I'm sorry about that, and I will do better. So, but it's also okay to be afraid, to not know that you don't always have all the answers. If you need to cry, that's okay. That's a release of emotion and energy, and reset and recognize, that you'll be okay and you can get through it. Just like your kids are going to do the same thing, and you need to give them grace and help them work through that and understand how to, that it's okay. There's a different way of responding, and teach them what that is. So important to keep schedule. And then it's okay for your kids to know that you're having stress and pressure as well, and that's okay for them to know that. You don't have to be the perfect model for them. It's actually good for them to see that you're not, because they're not going to be perfect. So perfection is something that we're all striving for, but is a journey.
Very agreed.
Okay, so last thoughts, any other questions? Just know that being vulnerable is part of being resilient. So once again, like, owning your mistakes, acknowledging them, that's being vulnerable. Grace for yourself and others is vital. And so, a lot of times I'll see people responding to something in a grocery store or out in the community, and I used to maybe thought, like, why is that something against me or what I've done? But what you have to realize is you have no idea what's going on with that person in their life in that situation. And so, understanding, it's like, I am sorry you're having that bad day. And, I'm not sure what's going on, but, I wish for you to have a better day, and hope things smooth out. A lot of times I'll see people stressed out in situations, and just give them an opportunity, acknowledge that I recognize they're having a difficult situation, and then it's okay and they can get through it. And a lot of times giving people that space can decompress whatever's happening in that situation. And sometimes you don't know that you may have helped them, but that's the ideal, hopefully, that we're trying to strive to get to, right? So non-judgmental, supporting each other, giving people grace, and that, this is a moment in time, tomorrow is a new day, next hour is a new hour. So you just got to take it one step at a time and recognize we may be taking, I say this a lot, I take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and recognize that, you just got to keep moving forward. Know when you're feeling the pressure and the stress, and take a moment to recenter, refocus, and figure out what that is to do. Any other questions or thoughts people might have? Well, I hope this is giving you something to think about and something that you can talk about with your kiddos, because that's important to have that dialogue with them. They want to have that interaction. They want to learn. They're sponges. And so we want to help them build resilient skills and understand that there are going to be difficult times. There's going to be trauma. There's going to be stress. Things are going to happen. And that if we have a good base of how to respond to those situations, that'll help build a better recovery for that, right? Anything else you want me to cover, Kathy, before I move on to one of the things that Kathy and I've, go ahead, Kathy, I said that
Oh,
and
no,
then I
I was
moved
to
on.
say, no, that's, I mean, everything that we talk about, that we've talked about tonight is all things that I think we try to relate in the classroom, you know, too. And there's a way to take everything that was said and kind of break it down to that level that we teach in the classroom. So hearing it at our level, an adult level, and knowing that we're comfortable with it, I think helps us share it with the little guys.
Definitely, for sure. Well, one of the things that Kathy and her team have talked about are what are some community mental health resources. And so I know I've given her this and I think she has it available for you guys, but just recognizing if you need more help than what you can deal with or what your support network's dealing with, just know there's companies out there and there's businesses out there that can help you with that. One of the things I do want to point out is Lisa McCare's. You know, if you're not familiar with that organization, they're local here. They have parenting practice classes. They do the Love and Logic model training. They have bullying prevention and youth wellness programs. And so it's a wonderful organization, grassroots, nonprofit in town, doing some great stuff and great work. You can reach them on their website, elliscares.org. You know, the other thing is, ComCare operates a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365 days a year mental health and substance use crisis helpline. We connect and we help connect you regionally to counseling and psychiatry services around the region. Our partner that we do that with is Rediscover Mental Health. And so we do that on behalf of them and for them. And so we may connect or onboard you into that organization, and they have all kinds of resources for you, your family, your kiddos, to get counseling, whatever level of services you may need. And they have locations in Raytown and Lee Summit, South Kansas City. You know, they're there to help as well. I mentioned Lakewood Counseling earlier. It's a private counseling clinic, but they have child and adolescent counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists. Everybody's doing telehealth right now because of the pandemic. And so usually you can get an intake into those services, but here's some other great these are all private counseling organizations: Rejuvenate, Healing Grace, New Hope, Swan Therapy. And then the other thing I wanted to just alert you to is Brain Balance. I talked a little bit about that right brain, left brain work. They really help make those connections across and help with regulation. And it's been a very interesting opportunity to learn more about what Brain Balance can do, but it's all natural physical exercises and stuff like that. So just to remind you, we are here to listen. So firststepforhelp.com, our crisis number is 888-279-8188. We have master's level clinicians that answer the phone 24 hours a day. And so we will hear your concern, assess and triage you to whatever services you need or give you helpful information if that's what you're looking for. We also answer the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And so we do get calls. About 15% of our calls come for kiddos under the age of 18. And so just know that we are the regional resource for that national hotline. And then recently, because of COVID, there's a FEMA grant that is funding Show Me Hope Support, which is crisis counseling and disaster distress helpline. And so you can call them and we will help link you to resources. So just know that's there and available for you. I forgot to give Kathy the magnets so she could pass them out, but I will bring them by soon. So just know, Resilience Builders, we're here to inform, inspire, and transform. This presentation was done in collaboration with Jamie Waymar. And if you want to know more about CommCare and what we do, you can visit us at commcareone.org and see opportunities there. And once again, I'm Terry Trafton. I'm a licensed counselor. If you want to follow up with me, you can do that as well. I'll be happy to link you or talk to you about anything that you might have questions about.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you,
Thanks,
Kathy.
Terry. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Terry. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for being here, guys. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Oh my
Thank
Have a
God.
you.
great
We
evening.
appreciate it.
We learn something every second. So this was awesome. Thank you
Wow.
guys.
I love to hear that, Emily. Good luck.
Thanks, hon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, stop. Oh, stop, share, stop recording.